Welcome to another episode of Failing Success. I'm your host, Chad Kaleky with Cosmic Design. Here today we have Jerry Fletcher. His company is called Z Access, and it's a marketing consultancy. And he's had this company since 1990, and he's going to share some of his stories along the way that have, at the time, seemed like big mistakes or failures, but then ended up, he came out the other side with some great successes. So Jerry, you want to go ahead and share just a little bit about your journey?
Well, okay, fine. Make it simple. I'm doing this because I got fired. Okay. I was the CEO of the largest B2B advertising agency in the Portland, Oregon area. We had clients all over this part of the country, into California and into Washington. And my board and I agreed to disagree. I mean, you can call it being fired, you can call it anything you want, but basically they said, we don't want to go the way you want to go. So I said, fine. And I left. So the first lesson I learned was, okay, how do you choose what business you want to be in? What do you do? Do you want to move or not? Basically, I said, I don't want to move. What can I do knowing what I know right now? And so I decided to open this consultancy. And it was kind of hard on the front end because I found myself working all the time. I set up an office in my home. And the first big thing that I think everyone needs to learn as an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur who's working from home especially, is there comes a time when you really need to close the door and walk out of that office and not go back. So the first lesson I learned was close the door, go have dinner with your family, and don't go back in there, because I found myself working at all times of the day and night and so on. And what I found is that that's a piece of information that most entrepreneurs, clients that I've had over the years, didn't really come to understand until I said, so how long are you, how much are you working? What are you doing, right? And I'd find me getting emails from them at, midnight or some silly thing like that. And so I'd say, wait, you can't do this. You got to get that time away from the office. Probably the best lesson for me, the most encouraging thing for me, was that when I started telling clients this, the reaction that I got was, oh, I can't do that. I have to keep working. And then they'd try it. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, my wife and I aren't arguing as much anymore. And it's really kind of fun when you do go see the kids play in that game, whatever they're in, soccer, baseball, whatever. And so I found that that's one of the first things that I think everybody should know. If you're gonna start a business, you're gonna be an entrepreneur. Yes, you need to work at it. Yes, you're gonna probably put in some extra hours, but the reality is you have to stop and walk away from it. I mean, I actually had this conversation 2 days ago with one of my clients who is a CFP, and he was, he also does taxes, and he's going, I have to work this weekend. I have to work this weekend. And I finally said, why don't you not work one day? Just take one day, right? Well, I haven't heard what the result of that's going to be, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be, I needed that. So that's the first one. That's the first big failure. What other kind of failures do you find that your audience really wants to know about?
Well, first I was going to say, I mean, you make a great point with this. Isn't the whole point of having your own company and entrepreneurship freedom? Freedom to spend time with your family, freedom to stop working at a certain point.
Yeah, that's the benefits. That's the sales points, right?
Right.
But the reality is a whole different animal.
Yeah, and it's you got to make that time for yourself, and I mean that's a big lesson that people should go into this knowing. So, like, how did you get your first clients when you were starting out?
Well, again, I was the CEO of an advertising agency, so I had a lot of connections anyway. What I did was I wrote a letter basically explaining what I was going to do, and sent it to just 60 of my closest friends in the Advertising Golf Association. Just sent it out to them. And I just told them what I was going to do. Well, as a result of that letter, I got 6 responses. 2 people said, good luck with that. 2 people said, hey, here's some folks I think you might be able to help. And 2 said, look, I've got this thing that has to be done. Would you mind doing that? That's how I got my first clients. Shortly thereafter, I was doing that kind of work and doing fine. And shortly thereafter, a former client of mine, a physicist who worked for a company called Tektronix, went out on his own, whatever you want to call it. And he said, hey, I've got this thing I need to advertise, and I know you can do this for me. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to make prints of digital photographs. So this is early in the digital photography arena, but he was working primarily with folks that were looking at the skies, the heavens, and wanting to print pictures of stars and so on. And so I said, I got to tell you, I think it's a wonderful idea, but it isn't going to work. And he went, well, I don't even want to try it. So I said, okay. Did my best to get as many people as I could into it. I said, here's what we're going to do. We were in a little hamburger place. I said, if this works, I'm buying dinner for you and your wife wherever you want. Okay. If it doesn't work, you're buying me a burger. And he went, okay, fine. Right. A couple months later, after the results are in, he said, would you like to have a burger? So we went and had a burger. And over that, we were just kind of having a fun lunch, along with he and an engineer friend that we both knew. And I said, so how's it going otherwise? He said, well, it's going pretty well. He said, I got something in the garage that you might want to take a look at. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, why don't you come take a look, right? Have you ever heard of a thing called steganography?
No, I haven't.
It's an old idea. Basically, in ancient times, not even ancient times, just, in the Renaissance, people would hide information in paintings and other things, not codes, but they would put things in. The most famous one has a skull that's been elongated so much you can't really tell what it is until you kind of move the picture around and change the perspective on it. It's like, oh, wow. So anyway, you can hide things inside images. And so what he did was he invented a way to do that digitally, and it can't be removed. So you can begin, I can see your mind's going, oh, wow, what could you do with that, right? Okay, so he takes me back to this dirt-floored garage, and he shows me this thing. He shows me a picture of a little girl with some flowers. I'm going, what the hell's that? He said, all you're seeing is the picture. And I said, yeah. He said, let me show you what's hidden in it. And there were reams of code hidden in this picture that nobody could see, okay? But it was always there. And he said, the fun part of this is that it doesn't matter what I do to it. He says, I can run it through a printer. I could print it out. I could recopy it. I can do all kinds of stuff with it. The code stays there. I said, that's wonderful. And he said, not only that, I can do it on a non-digital thing, an analog thing. I said, well, he said, well, I'll put it on an umbrella. I went, really? Okay. And he said, I need help. I said, what kind of help do you need? He said, well, I need to name the company. We need to find some more funding, et cetera, right? That little company, which I helped name, they didn't help me, I named it, built their first logo for them. And then I trained all the people in that company on how to do networking because he didn't know how. And I helped them raise $500,000 in 17 days. And in those days, $500,000 went a lot further than it does today.
Yeah.
That little company was called Digimark, okay, which you may or may not have ever heard of. But the things that they developed are used on every currency in the world except one, the United States. Because if it's not invented here or in their organization, the United States doesn't adopt it. Okay, but it's all over the world. Amazing product, amazing service, and I have to tell you, when that went public, it's probably the best party I've ever been to. We were in a room with, I think, 10 or 12 round tables seating 8 to 10 people each. Right, there was nobody in the room worth less than $4 million.
Wow.
Okay, so the mistake was he wanted to do something that wouldn't work, but then we fell into this other thing. Did we have some mistakes along the way? Oh, you wouldn't believe. Money was so tight that the 5 men that were involved in the development of that product, we used to make heat water up in an old, kind of banged up tin pot, and then serve it in cracked cups. Nothing matched, because we couldn't afford it. Okay, but again, the mistake that was made was trying to sell something that nobody really wanted, and then that turned into the operation, this other possibility. It took a while to sell it. In fact, it took years to position it, and that's one of the things I'm really good at. But in this case, I'm not going to claim responsibility for it. I tried, and finally somebody said, what are these codes that you can get that you can get anything done in? I can't remember the name of it, but it's like having a watermark inside things, and that's the way they're positioned it these days. Anyway, so that's kind of one way to get at it. Other major, I'm trying to think of other really big mistakes.
While you're coming up with that, I was going to say with regards to this, I think it's really important that when you do find the use case for a brilliant product like this, be aware enough to be like, my vision wasn't necessarily the right one. This is what this can be used for, and run with it. And that's exactly what it sounds like happened there.
Well, that's basically what we did. I mean, there were some other things that were kind of interesting. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make, I'm an investor these days as well, and so I see it from both sides. I see it from the investor standpoint and from the standpoint of the people that are doing the presentations, because I offer a kind of a free service in our local area where a group of investors and I do a marketing survey for these folks to see if there are any red flags, any concerns, major problems, and so on. And what's happened is that I've seen through doing that how important it is to have a longer range plan and know and understand where you're going, but also have the ability to explain what you do in 7 words or less. Okay. And I hate to say that, but again, one of the things when I started out, I was having difficulty trying to explain what it was I did. And so like most people, I started looking for ways to do that. And one of the things that I found early on was that speaking was a great way to get in front of more people. And so one of the subjects that I spoke on was networking, and a piece of networking, which we all know and love, which is the elevator speech. I actually have video of me doing a demo of that with some poor guy that's come out of the audience and is willing to work on, and he starts telling me what he does. And I'm going 5th floor, 4th floor, 3rd floor, etc. Well, I did that for a while, and then I started looking at it, and I said, wait a minute, is that a really good idea? And I have to tell you that the elevator pitch is probably one of the worst ideas that's presented to entrepreneurs on an ongoing basis. I had to learn the hard way because I was presenting it and so on. And I finally said, so is there a better way? Is there something that I can do that's better than that? And I came up with a thing called 30-second marketing. And the single biggest difference between that and an elevator pitch is that it's not a pitch. It's a conversation instead of a commercial. Okay. Again, you learn by doing, and the mistake I was making was saying, this is what I can do for you, and on, right? Well, the way that 30-second marketing works is it flips that and says, okay, what's the problem that 80% of the people that you might want to do business with have? Okay. Use that as the way to set things up. So I'll give you the example I've used for a number of years. This is why I put my daughter through college. She's now the CIO of the Department of State. So it must have worked. Anyway, so the formula was I'd go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, anyone around the town here. There's lots of chambers. And they have that circle where you introduce yourself. I'd say, hi, my name's Jerry Fletcher. I run Z-Axis Marketing. And what I do is build websites that make rain. And I'd shut up, right? Sure as I'm sitting here talking to you, 4 or 5 people would come up to me after that introduction sequence and say, hey, could you tell me more about that? And my next thing that I would say is, well, you know how when your niece or your nephew or whoever built that website for you, when they went off to college, you've been having difficulty getting any changes made in it? And people go, yeah. Well, what we do is we build you a website that has the ability for you to change all the pictures and all the words that you want to, but we fix it so you can't screw up the navigation. Would you be interested in that? And then the next thing we would do would be close the time to sit down with them and talk about it. Okay. Now, that is a pretty good example. And the way that this works is 30-second marketing is a hook, a hold, pitch, and a close. Okay. The hook is I build websites that make rain. The hold is, how, whatever it happens to be, I don't care what yours happens to be. And then the pitch is, well, what we do is, okay. And you'll note that whole thing took less than 30 seconds. Well, the current research on how long you have people's attention, basically has said that within the first second, you have to have something on your website, the words you say, whatever, that makes it easy for them to remember you or to bring back the memory of you if they already know who you are. If they don't know you, you've got 3 seconds to say something that will help them remember you. So memorability becomes a major factor, okay? You've got maybe 15 seconds total to give them that memory hook and a way for them to tell someone else what you do to refer you, okay? And after that, the remaining 15 seconds of that 30-second marketing thing that I put together years ago, basically that's just the cream on the coffee. It's like, these are the extra things you want to tell them. And what I've done over the years is I've taught my clients how to do that. So one of the things you'll find with anybody I've worked with is that's the way they introduce themselves in a self-introduction. That's what's used to introduce them anytime they're speaking. It's what's used to basically set up what goes on the panels of their website, first, second, third panels, and so on. And usually we'll do a video of them introducing themselves that way. So it's become a staple in what I do, but I had to learn the hard way that you don't do pitches on elevators. What you do is begin conversations, because long term you want to get to trust and build a relationship with that person, either as a someone you want to work with, or a referral source, or just because they happen to be a nice guy or gal. Okay.
And that's a good practice just in anything in life, really. Form real relationships. And the questions you're asking in your example of that 30-second marketing, they're yes responses. Do you have this problem? Yes, I do. And then you ask another yes question. So now the person like, okay, there's an understanding there. Now we can really talk if there's an opportunity here.
Right. And essentially what you're doing is building trust. And
so Jerry, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out to you with Z-Axis Marketing, how would they get in touch with you?
Just go to jerryfletcher.com. That'll get you to my primary website, which is also the Z-Axis Marketing website, but it's easier to spell jerryfletcher.com. Okay. And most people do know people like myself. Most consultants are better known by their name than their company name, which is another, how can I put this? It's another failure point. Okay. If you're going to open a consultancy, don't put some wonderful gee whiz name on it, because I can't remember that, but I'm going to remember your name. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks, Jerry, for coming on the show today. And thanks everybody for listening to Failing to Success. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow and rate the show, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Chad Kaleky from Conversing, and thank you.